The school resource officer who stood outside while a gunman opened fire at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School now faces 11 counts, including child neglect and in connection with the deadly shooting. His attorney and the local police union plan on fighting the charges, saying that they don't apply. Legal journalist Molly Barrows is here with me to talk about this. First of all, what is the basis of the charges? I looked at this. I think most of those charges have just no chance at all for standing constitutionally, although there's a couple that do. What's your take on this?
Yeah, so that seems to be the general consensus. And of course, this all stems from his lack of action, his inaction at the shooting in Parkland in February of 2018. So he is charged with a number of counts of child neglect as well as culpable negligence and one count of perjury. So the police union, his attorney are saying that these negligence charges are not going to stick because you have to be proven to be a caregiver and be responsible for someone in your care who is relying on you to keep them safe. And in this case, acting in their official capacity, he was acting in his official capacity as a police officer. That doesn't make him a caregiver, so he's not held liable, which is interesting to me because it seems like as a public servant, it's part of your duty.
What they're going to have to do with this officer is get him close to the school on a regular basis, to where he is somewhat part of the system. If the closer they get to caregiver, the better chance.
Well, he was the school resource officer.
And so that's what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
The closer you get there, you do fall into that caregiver kind of exception.
Yes.
It's going to be very discretionary, I think, for a judge. It's as a matter of law. A judge is going to have to make a decision to either say, I can make this decision as a matter of law that he doesn't fall within a caregiver, or he's going to put it to the jury and let a jury decide, which is what I would recommend, is let it go to the jury, let them determine whether he falls within that niche of caregiver or not. Look, Broward, a coward. Okay, you see,
his nickname.
You cannot miss that photo where he's standing there like a dolt. Now, look, we all have to question what would we do.
Right.
But he made a choice.
He signed up for that job.
He signed up for that job to put himself at risk. And here you got children being shot. My understanding is he's out there talking. While he's talking, 77 shots are heard inside.
Close to 75. You're exactly right. Yeah, so that's where they get him on the perjury charge. As he said, when he heard the shots being fired, he thought they were outside. He said he only heard a few. And he stood outside one of the buildings where the shooting was taking place with another staff member. And you can see him standing out there for 48 minutes.
Inescapable that they were going on.
Yes.
He knew exactly what was happening.
Yes.
Brings us to... have other law enforcement been charged in similar cases, or this case?
No, not in this particular case, but there was a lot of fallout with other officers. There was another sergeant, Brian Miller, who was also fired from the sheriff's department for his lack of action. He arrived. He also sat in his car, took the time to put his bulletproof vest on. They said essentially stayed in his car, didn't get on the radio, and it was partially his responsibility to coordinate.
Stayed in his car after he had his bulletproof vest
and that came to light. Several other officers were the same.
Okay, here's my early call.
Yes.
If the judge allows this to go to the jury, I think he has enough to do that. It's going to be it's really a jury question, because the question is, was he in the capacity of a caregiver? There's legislation, there's laws that say if that's the case, then he maybe can be prosecuted under that. I'm kind of for this.
I know, it's interesting.
I'm for it in a big way, because if somebody says, this is what I'm going to do, I choose to do this. I choose to carry a gun. I choose to put myself in harm's way. There are police every day that put themselves in harm's way. Every day you read some extraordinary story about a police officer that goes well beyond what you would expect on behalf of people to protect human life. Well,
Sheriff Israel, who was overseeing the Broward County Sheriff's Department, DeSantis, our governor, removed him from that position in January, bringing up to your point, for systemic failures throughout, because there were a number of officers who failed to do their job, lack of organization, coordinating the scene. Even first responders were not even allowed into the building initially, because they were still securing it even after the gunman had already been taken into custody. So there was one point in particular that goes to what you're talking about. They held him responsible, the sheriff, for changing the wording of a policy in regards to an active shooter that basically gave deputies, by changing one word, he gave deputies the option of whether or not to confront an active shooter. They said, instead of saying they shall go in, it says they may go in. So that was one of the reasons DeSantis used to remove him.
Why would you even change that wording?
Because he said it would be suicide.
You sign up sometimes. If you talk to these officers, I mean, look,
they know
I used to be a prosecutor. I know. I got to tell you, some of these officers, there's not any way they would not have gone into that school and done what they were supposed to do. They do it every day across this country. Here's the problem. It all flows from the top, okay? Israel at the top hires people that are much like Israel. That person then hires the next person. What we see in Florida and a lot of southern, I don't guess it's just southern problem, but it's kind of a good old boy system.
Yes.
The good old boy system is, I knew your daddy. He coached the football team. You were a linebacker on the football team. Yeah, you had straight F's all through school. Come on, go to work with us. We know you don't have any extra training.
Right.
That's not the norm, but when you see it, it's like pockets, and you see these pockets, and that's what Israel had. He had a bunch of nincompoops that all flowed from his personality, his character, all the way down to the bottom.
That he allowed this culture to exist, and then it resulted in this just epic disaster when it came to the shooting in Parkland. And that's essentially what DeSantis said. So there had been pressure on Sheriff Israel to resign. There had been pressure on Scott Peterson to do something. And by the way, he retired. The only thing that he could potentially be, right after the shooting, he retired. So he got his pension.
Yeah.
Because of the perjury charge. If that sticks, he could lose that.
Perjury's going to stick. That's my prediction. Molly, thank you for joining me.
Thanks, Pat.